Hello everyone, welcome to another part of Active Directory Certificate Services or ADCS exploitation series. And in this video we'll look into ESC4 privilege escalation that exploits ACL misconfigurations on the template object itself, where a regular user has been granted write privileges, for example, over a template object in Active Directory, and therefore allowing the attacker to modify template settings to make it vulnerable to other ESC escalations. As always, we'll be using the Certipy wiki. If you go Google Certipy and go to the wiki, we'll just walk through their example. And again, if you need an overview of how ADCS works, you can go back to watch my first video of the series where I explain it in more details. But here we'll focus on ESC4 exploitation and somewhat on ESC1 because it's relevant to the topic and how to remediate the issue. Right, let's dive in. So here as always, I have my Kali VM, have my domain controller, and I have my Active Directory Certificate Services server that hosts ADCS. And I already created a template called vulnerable4 to demonstrate the attack. Let's analyze it real quick. First, it doesn't seem to be vulnerable to any of the attacks, like it's not misconfigured. If you browse around for extensions, it only allows encrypting file system and secure email. And under issues requirements, enroll it does not supply subject. And overall, this template, if you go over each step, it doesn't seem to be vulnerable. And it is not misconfigured. The template itself is safe. But if we go back to the main controller, here I'm inside ADSI edit, and you can navigate here, but go in here and type in clicking connect and given this connection setting a random name, for example, cert, and there you specify the object where certificate templates live. So it's certificate templates, public key services, this an Active Directory object where all the certificate templates live, because as you know, in Active Directory, everything is an object, and you click K to connect. It's going to bring you to this menu for where all the templates are. These are the actual AD objects that are created. And we can see we're vulnerable for in here. So if we double click on it and go to security, and we can see that authenticated users have full control over it, which means they can actually override the template, the object itself, which gives them permissions to override the template, and therefore they would be able to make this template vulnerable, which is what I'm going to demonstrate. But yeah, let's go to the wiki, and this is what they're saying, like, hey, certificate templates are the objects, they're here, and if there's a ACL misconfiguration, if somebody has write permissions, write owner, or full control, which is what we have, they can modify the template to make it vulnerable to ESC1, for example, or ESC2. And yeah, we're gonna use Certipy to see if we have any vulnerable templates. So let's dive in. Here's the Certipy syntax. So specify find vulnerable to find all vulnerable templates within the environment. Start out to just print it out on our screen, and our user and the main controller IP. Here we have it. ESC4 user has dangerous privileges. So this suggests that our user can modify the template. So here, alright, toggle properties, we have authenticate users, and full control we also have authenticate users, which means basically anyone has an account in Active Directory. Just to show that our user doesn't have special privileges, it's just a regular user, yeah, only group as domain users, Parker. So let's go back to the exploitation. So yeah, we identified that it's ESC4 vulnerable. We go back to the wiki. It says we use this command, -default configuration, and here it lists everything it's going to do. It's going to specify enroll supply subject, which is going to make it vulnerable to EC1. It's going to set client authentication EQ because we don't have one. give us full control, disables manager approval, which means nobody has to approve it, authorization signature to 0, and I'm not too sure what this property does, but it's going to do this as well. It's also going to create a backup, as we can see, of the original template, so we could restore it later. So let's make it vulnerable to ESC1. And all we do is Certipy template, which is subcommand to modify templates, give it our username, password, domain controller IP. We give it our template, which is going to be vulnerable 4 in our example, and we specify our default configuration, which is going to make it vulnerable to EC1. So hit enter. Yeah, because I was already playing around with it, I have to override the saved config. Yes. And it's gonna tell us, hey, here's everything I'm gonna do. Are you okay with that? We click yes, because we have a copy of the template, which we could restart later. And boom, successfully update vulnerable 4. This might take some time to sync in the real environment, so I'll force it the sync here because I don't want to wait. It might take up to a couple of hours on real engagement, but here I'll just go and sync the template by unenrolling it and enroll it again. Alright, so now let's try the vulnerable command again and see what we have. And right now we should see the exact same template to be vulnerable to EC1. Fingers crossed that will work. And it did. EC1 and always applies subject. And now we just have to carry out the standard EC1 attack. If you wanna go more in depth on it, you can go back to my first video where I explain it. But here it's very simple. Pretty much all we do is specify a subject alternative name, and the SAN will be interpreted by the domain controller. It's gonna take priority, and basically administrator account will be the user will get certificate for, because we specify it as a SAN. Right here, click enter. And we got a certificate for administrator because of the SAN and because it's vulnerable to EC1. And now all we have to do is authenticate using the certificate to get a NT hash for this user. And here we have it. So specify authenticate, administrator, and domain control IP. And yeah, we got the NT hash for administrator user. And so we could test it. Use WMI exec. In packet to authenticate as administrator. IP and introductions. Bye bye. And a Marvel administrator, which is the domain admin account for this domain. And we successfully owned the domain. So now let's do a restore real quick. So now we have our saved template right here, vulnerable for the JSON, which is the original template, because we don't want to leave the environment in a vulnerable state, and we need to revert all the changes we make usually during a pen test. So let's do that. And command's gonna look like this. Template, user, password, domain controller IP, specify our template that we modified, and write configuration. We just give it the configuration JSON file of the original config to saved, and -save to make sure it doesn't save our vulnerable version to our system. But it's gonna revert it. And yeah, you sure wanna revert the changes? I'm sure, yes. And successfully updated it. So now let me republish the template so we could verify that it's no longer vulnerable to EC1. Alright, so now if I do find the vulnerable, we should not see EC1 anymore because we reverted it back. And yeah, it worked. It's only vulnerable to EC4, which was the original, but it no longer has the properties to make it vulnerable to ESC1. So let's look at how we can remediate this problem. So again, you just go to ADCS edit and you connect to this object. And here under security, we just have to remove full control or authenticate users. We only give them read permissions, which is by default. Apply and hit OK. Now we publish it. The sync changes. And now when we look for vulnerable templates, we shouldn't see any of this, and we do not. So there are no vulnerable templates. And you might need someone to have write permissions for some reason. There's some kind of application or a special user that needs these permissions. Just make sure you limit it to those users. Do not give it to broad groups such as Authenticated Users or domain users, because it gives those permissions to everyone. And make sure to audit ACLs on all these template objects for certificate services for ADCS. You can use tools such as Bloodhound to review ACLs or just native PowerShell, or you can go in here if you don't have too many templates and just click through this to make sure there are no misconfigurations. Well, that was ESC4. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.